I haven't heard anybody talk about this, but I work with people that we do this a lot. I do a lot of anti-racism work. I go out, I've done educational opportunities, I've made educational materials, and nobody has been talking about the Whisper Network. It's something that a lot of people were aware of during the civil rights era, during the Jim Crow era, but as of the 70s and later, it's more and more underground and less spoken about, though it still exists, obviously, and still impacts people of color. And this is exactly what the Network looks like, acts like, and how it functions once it's engaged. And when I'm doing trainings, when I am trying to educate people on what this falls under the umbrella of the culture of white supremacy. So the illustration that I was talking about with the iceberg, and that white women are going to be above the waterline, and because you're white women and you're above the waterline, the only thing keeping you from being on the top of the iceberg is that you're a woman. You're a white woman, therefore you're above the waterline. And because you're above the waterline, the only thing that you can feel under the umbrella of white supremacy culture is patriarchy and misogyny. Because you are white, you are not below the waterline. Everything below the waterline is attached to our race and our ethnicity. That's why when it comes down to us as people of color calling out things and being like, oh, that's racist, that's this, that's that, and then the white women are going to be like, why is everything about race? Because it is. If you're below the waterline, everything that you feel under the culture of white supremacy is attached to the fact that you're not a white woman above the waterline. The fact that you're not only experiencing patriarchy and misogyny, you're experiencing systemic harm, you're experiencing the impacts of a whisper network, you are experiencing all of the other things, the long list of things that fall under white supremacy culture that put us under the waterline. And depending on who we are, our identity, like, it puts us either right below the waterline or below the entire iceberg. And we have to experience and feel everything else that falls under the culture of white supremacy. And what happens with the Whisper Network is exactly what we've seen with Liz Plank, Colleen Hoover, Alex Sachs, Taylor Swift. Blake Lively is the center of it, and the Whisper Network basically exploded out around her and got activated against Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath. That's exactly how a Whisper Network functions in order to thwart the opportunity, ruin the life, and potentially destroy the people that is being targeted by it. And Justin Baldoni is proof that you don't have to be an actual person of color for the Whisper Network to be activated and engaged. It can be just the perception. it can be any number of things, because you do not have to specifically be a person of color in order for white supremacy culture to be engaged and activated, to be used and weaponized against you. But this is a textbook definition of what a Whisper Network is, how it gets activated, and what happens when it is successful. In this case, we are lucky that so much stuff is documented. In this case, we are Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath. They are being saved because there's footage, and because there's people like me that know what we're looking at and have been calling out what we've been looking at. That this whole thing with Blake and this web of people that have been trying to, not trying, they've been actively targeting Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath. The problem is that it's us on this app that are doing the work that Colleen Hoover, that Taylor Swift, that Alex Sachs should have been doing. But the problem is, like I said, once Justin Baldoni moved towards Colleen Hoover and then moved towards Blake Lively, he was already knocking on the door of people who do not speak the culture of social justice. They haven't been doing their anti-racism work, clearly. That's why they're engaging in the culture of white supremacy. They don't do their anti-racism work, so they live in the space, they live in the very privileged space to think that this is what social justice looks like, acts like, and moves like. And unfortunately, they've basically just been using the tools that they benefit from because they live in a manner that affords them the privilege, the benefit of engaging in that culture. When you activate the Whisper Network, when you move like they have, it's because you benefit from the system, the culture of white supremacy. You're protected by it. It's why people have been so sickened when they talk about Emmett Till. That's another very overt form of a Whisper Network. And it's like the height of danger that can come from a Whisper Network. It's a network that got activated because of one person and how they felt and how they wanted to destroy somebody else. That's why it's so important to learn about what that culture is so that you don't engage in it, so that you aren't harmful. It's not that we're trying to be offensive and be like, oh, you're racist. We're calling it out because we want it to end. Think I've said it so many times, the culture of white supremacy, racism, is societal narcissistic abuse. Imagine every time that you called out in a personal relationship with a partner their toxic, harmful behavior. You weren't calling it out to insult them. You weren't calling it out to mock, demean, or break the relationship with them. You were calling it out because you wanted it to end and you wanted your relationship to get closer and stronger. So when people say, no, 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 and try to defend, like, I'm a good person, I'm not like that. It's the same thing when you call out, like, emotional and psychological abuse in a personal relationship. You're not saying it just to say it. You're not saying it because you want to make somebody feel dumb or stupid or offend them. You're calling it out because you want it to end. That's why I'm saying, look at what this is. This is a Whisper Network. It falls under the umbrella of white supremacy. Learn what it is. Learn to unlearn it.